Welcome to part 2 of this video series. In part 1 we left with the transmission disassembled. We now have the transmission housing entirely cleaned inside and out, along with all the gears. Part 2 is going to be installing new bearings and new bearing races, and obviously assembling the transmission, as well as the steering gearbox. We're going to be putting in new bushings and oil seals. So let's get started, and let's get to the bench and look at some bearings. Here we have the main shaft of the transmission. There are two big gears on here. Naturally they've been slid off, but this is your input shaft. This particular bearing here, as you can see, just slides off real easily. It is supposed to do that. Okay, it is designed to slip. That way, if there is any, say, debris inside of this gear, it is supposed to slip on this shaft so it won't chew this out. It is very important to inspect the inside of it. This is not a bearing race. This is machined right into the gear. If you have major pits or marks of any kind, you would need a new entire shaft. You would not be able to use that. This one's pretty good. Also on the shaft, when you get a new bearing, just make sure that this part has no play, that the bearing just does in fact slip over there with no movement whatsoever. And it's also, you can see where this was rubbing a little bit. That's natural, obviously, if it slips. And just make sure that there is no major groove worn here. This probably looks worse than what it is. It's very smooth. I can't really even catch anything on my fingernail there. Also on this particular one, you can see where that shaft was rubbing on the inside. That is not supposed to do that. This bearing here, as I showed you in part 1 of the video series, it is actually so worn that it caused this shaft to go forward too much. There is, I think, around roughly 90 thousandths clearance between the end of this shaft and the gear inside there. But like I said, this slips off, and now we're going to remove some of these bearings from the shaft because these are pressed on. Okay, the main shaft is now just set here in the vise to hold it upright. I got some padding there to protect it, but it's not too tight. Just need to secure it. I got the bearing puller hooked on it. There's a lot of different kind of pullers out there. A lot of people have different styles of getting these off. I'm going to do it this way because I have the tool. Some people cut them off. That's up to you. I personally don't like to cut them. You always run the risk of nicking something, but so let's go. I'm going to put a ratchet on this and we'll pull this gear off. And there you go, it's off. Since the input shaft is a lot longer, it adds a little bit of a difficulty, but I got two 3/8 all tread, and I made an extension for it so the bearing race can be pulled off now. Alright, now we're going to remove some of the bearing races, well, not some of them, all of them, and I'm just going to use the old welding trick and use the heat and contraction to make them fall right out. I'm not going to use them, so it doesn't matter that I'm going to ruin them. Now now that the bearing races have been taken out, welded out, I apologize, my battery died right at the end, but I'm heating it right now on a propane heater. Just gives a nice even heat, and according to the laser thermometer, it's about 600 and some degrees. So we'll take this off and we'll put the new race inside. They pretty much drop in with that metal expanded, and makes it a lot easier and less likely to damage the race. And there you go, seated in real nice. Fell right in. Before we heat this input shaft housing up, there is an oil seal, and I removed that. I do have a regular seal puller, but it was really hard. It was stubborn to get out, so I had to just get a rod from the other end and pound it out. But we're going to heat this up, put the new bearing race in, and then after everything cools, we're going to install the new oil seal. Alright, now that everything is cooled off, we're going to go and put this new oil seal. Very important that you replace this. This will keep your clutch from getting oil soaked. If you look at this seal, the front part is flush. The rubber and the metal are almost equal, and then in the back there's an opening around there. You want that opening or that gap facing up, or if you want to look at it like you want that opening facing towards the transmission. So I'm going to get the seal driver here and pound this in. As you can see, all the new races are installed. Everything's cooled off. Everything's looking good. So now we're going to start to install the bearings on the different shafts. On the input shaft here, we're going to heat the bearing up, because you have to get it expanded to get over these splines, and it has to go the whole way down to the base here. So you're going to have it fairly hot to make it all that distance. Alright, bearing is hot. Right down, clear to the bottom. Let it cool off and it won't be able to come off at all. Be a press fit. Alright, next is the counter shaft. I didn't show pulling the old bearings off, but I'll show you putting the new ones on as well. This is again going to be bearings that are heated up, and it will slide right on, and then once it cools off, it will be as tight as can be. Alright, I'm just heating this bearing up on the torch here now. You want to make sure it's good and hot to get over this shaft, because if not, it might go down about halfway and then stop, and you might damage the new bearing getting it off. So you want to do it right the first time. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. This has been on here probably about 30 seconds or so. Alright, let's try it. There we go, whole way down. Alright, we have the counter shaft flipped over and getting ready to install the bearing on the other side. Just heating it up here for the last few moments. And it's nice and hot, should be ready to go. There you go. Alright, I'm on the final shaft. This is the main shaft. What you see here is would be facing the back side of the transmission. And remember, on the front side, that bearing is not a pressed fit, so we don't have to heat that up. So once this bearing is installed, all the new bearings will be completed and should be ready here real soon. Alright, let's go for it. Now that oil seal is installed, we come to the front bell housing of the transmission. I had already went and put new bushings in this rod here for your throwout bearing fork. And I have here a retainer cap. This is going to go down the bottom section here. That is going to hold the counter shaft in place. And I have a gasket here, and I'm also going to just put a little bit of sealant around, basically just to hold the gasket in place. This is a really tight fit. You have to get it nice and straight, and you'll have to tap it on to get it to go on the whole way. Got it started, the holes are lined up. And it is in. Next, we're going to install the input shaft housing. I already put the gasket on there. First of all, I put the gasket sealant on. I only put it on one side. I don't put it on here or the other spot on the transmission, because that way when you go to push it on, you can pivot it, because it is again a nice tight precision fit. You have to go on nice and straight, and then you have to rotate it a little bit to the left or right to get the holes to line up. You want to make sure that your throwout bearing fork here is forward, and so that way when you go to put this on and flop it up, it has to be in front of this housing. Up next is your throwout bearing. Like I said before, previously, this throwout bearing is only a couple years old and has seen very little use, so I'm going to use it again. If you need to replace your throwout bearing, this just slides on and off this cast piece here. Before you go ahead and put that on, I just like to get some grease here and smear it on where the throwout bearing rides. This cannot be greased at any other time, so you have to make sure you do it now. And also, if you want, put some grease on your fork here, so everything will be well protected. And you slide your throwout bearing on just like that. And then you will grab your springs and attach it in that small hole back there, and then up to the hole up here, your throwout bearing. The springs, this long part goes towards the front, the stubby end goes to the back. Alright, the moment you've all been waiting for, we're finally going to be able to reinstall the gears of the transmission. I have in my hand the counter shaft. Just like when we took this out, I had to remove the PTO hub off the end of the shaft. We still have to keep that off, and we will keep it off until we're ready to put the bearing retainer on. But this is a tight fit, but it goes down in there quite snug. You have to be careful not to bang all the new bearings around. And it sneaks right out through there. Just like that. And now you can finally reinstall the PTO hub. The teeth will be facing you, and then you will have this large washer with the nut and bolt and a lock washer. And now with that tight, you want to grab your shims. There was 3 on here. These shims are not all the same thickness. They do vary. I marked each one with a C that came off of the counter shaft. So you don't want to grab all the shims from the main shaft and the counter shaft and just throw them into a pile. You want to make sure that you keep track of them. And so we're going to grab our PTO support right here, and we're going to slide these shims on there. And I'm not going to talk about adjusting them just yet. I'm going to go ahead and put this bearing support on. Grab the shaft up there. Alright, now you just have to put the 4 bolts in, and as I mentioned, I think before, I have all new lock washers. This tractor's 71 years old, and all the old lock washers were pretty well flattened out, not very functional. So if you're doing this, you may want to replace them as well. So we're going to go ahead and put these 4 bolts all in and tighten them up, and then we're going to adjust the bearing preload, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Alright, now it's time to adjust the bearing preload. And basically what that is when you put this housing or this cap on the main shaft or the counter shaft here, you have those shims. Those shims prevent this piece to be too close to the bearing, and when it's too close to the bearing, it creates too much of a tightness. So you add or take away shims to get the right amount of tension. You almost want to make it, or you can look at it as, you know, pretend this torque wrench is the shaft, and you have a top and a bottom, and you're just squeezing and compressing to the center. You don't want too much, and you don't want too little. Too much will damage the bearings, too little will damage the bearings. However, it would be a little bit best to be on the loose side than it would be on the tight side. This torque wrench measures in, let me see if you can see that, inch pounds and Newton meters, but we're interested in the inch pounds. The manual calls for 15 to 20 inch pounds of torque. Now, we're not interested in how much it takes to get moving the shaft to rotate. We are interested in seeing how much it is as you gently rotate the shaft. And right now I'm a little over 20, I'm probably between 20 and 25 inch pounds. Now remember, the manual calls for 15 to 20, so right now this is too tight, and I can even reach down into the shaft. It wasn't a shock to me. It's still a little bit stiff. So I think if I take all this off and add one more thin shim, we'll test it again, put it all back together, test it, and hopefully that will free up some of the tension on those bearings. Okay, I added a couple shims. I made mine out of different thicknesses of gasket paper. I won't go through the whole process and take video of it because it's very boring and tedious, but basically what I did was I just kept taking this on and off and adding the right kind of thickness of shim to get the proper bearing adjustment. Right now I am at 10 inch pounds. I know you can't see that, but I'm at 10 inch-pounds as I rotate the shaft around. The book does call for 15 to 20 inch-pounds. This is not foot-pounds, this is inch-pounds now. I had it actually set at 15, and I felt that it was a little bit too tight. The main goal is to make sure that the shaft has the ideal end play would be 0. That means rocking back and forth. As long as the bearings are seated in the race and they're not tight, I can go and just turn the gears in here by my finger. You know, they're not coasting around fast or anything, but there's just enough tension that I am happy with that. So we're going to move on to the main shaft now, and we'll have 2 gears to slide onto. Before we go and put the main shaft in and the input shaft, I just want to point it out, this gear. I don't think I've ever said anything about that. I apologize. That is the reverse idler gear. There is a bushing in the center of that gear, and there is a shaft, let me zoom in here, right there, that the gear rides on. This particular shaft, there is 0 slop in it. It's really good. I feel confident it will have years and years more of life left into it, so I just left it alone. But if you would need to take that out, there is a little plug on the left hand side of the transmission. You would need to remove that, and then you would be able to see that little pin right there, and you would drive that pin out in this direction, and then that would allow you to pound out the shaft through that hole, where actually you would have the tool coming in from that hole and pushing it out towards the front of the transmission. But like I said, this thing here is alright, and I'm just going to let it be, and let's get the input shaft in next. Before I slide the input shaft in, I always like to put some grease where the seal rides. I also put some grease on the seal itself. That way it won't be rubbing raw on the shaft, and we'll be rotating things around and everything. I just don't want to, you know, cause any premature wear. It will just be gliding along real nice on that shaft. So that's always a good thing to do or remember if you are doing this. Alright, and as you put the input shaft through the back into the front, when you're going through that new seal, you just want to make sure that you don't damage it. Just kind of be gentle with it and just kind of work its way through. There, it went through. And I don't like to drag it through the seal, but just kind of lift it up and help guide it out. You can grab it from the front then. Move the gears around to get them lined up. There they are, finally. Okay. These gears are known as helical cut gears. You notice the gears are at an angle. Those of you who have an early 9N, they were actually straight cut gears, like you see on throughout the rest of this transmission. They did switch to that later on in production. Now the 8N tractor, all of the gears are helical cut. A couple good things about that. This is actually stronger. This helical cut, you actually have more teeth making contact at all time instead of the straight cut where you don't have as many teeth making contact. That's what makes them stronger. Also, they have a tendency to make less noise, less gear noise. Okay, I'm going to show you on the floor here real quick how these gears are going to go. It's almost impossible to have the camera there to see any of this. So I'm just going to show you that this is your first and third gear, and this is your second and reverse gear. This is your main shaft. This will be the front of the transmission, or towards the bell housing. This will be the back. The shaft is going to come in and go through both of those. And also you want to put your bearing. Remember that this bearing does not press on, it just slips over. So the next time you see these parts, they will be installed in the transmission. And there you have the first, second, third, and reverse gears installed on the main shaft. I haven't bolted this down yet, but I just wanted to show you the shims. There was 3 from the factory. The one is a 12 thousandths and the other 2 are 5 thousandths. You can purchase 12 thousandths, 5 thousandths, and 3 thousandths, or you can make your own. This is what it had originally, so I'm going to bolt these down and the shaft and everything will move forward, but we will again go through the process just like we did down here to get the proper bearing preload. Alright, the main shaft bearings have been set. I had to add about 10 thousandths of shim to it. When I first put it together with all of the original 3, it was at 25 inch-pounds, which is the maximum according to the manual, but I felt that it was way too tight, so I backed it off a little bit. And this shaft here presents a little bit of a challenge. What I did was I put some masking tape on there, and I got a 1 5/16 socket and just kind of wedge it over there, and I can get it to turn. And I'm a little over, probably around 10 to 12 inch-pounds now as I'm rotating the shaft, which is fine. I can turn it with my hand freely. There is no play front or back, so I'm quite pleased with this, and we're ready to move on to the installation of the shifting forks and rails. Okay, the shifter forks were put in place, and we already installed the one shifter rail. This is going to take some patience. If you remember in part 1 in the teardown, I mentioned these little steel balls. There is a spring down in there, and you have to drop that ball into that spring and then drive the rod through. You have to hold it down and push it through. It's a lot better if you have somebody here helping you. It is frustrating. You will drop it down into the transmission. You will try to find it and everything else, but there's no sense in trying to even begin to show you this process. I'm just going to explain to you how to do it. And as you can see in this one shifter rail here, those indents, that's where the ball rests. The spring will push up. These rails are different. This is the left side, this is the right side. There is a front and a back. You will see the slot there. This will actually go to the back of the transmission, just like that one is right there. So you want to make sure after you go through all the hassle of putting it in that it is in fact the right one and in the right direction. Okay, we're looking at the second shifter rail. I had just pushed down on the ball with this screwdriver. It takes a good bit of force, and again you have to be careful that it doesn't shoot out and fly out and go down into the transmission. But once the shaft is over top of the ball, you are safe, and all you really need to do then is just tap it the rest of the way through. Once the rails are in place, you can install this little plate that goes into those notches that I was telling you about. Both notches face inward, obviously, and then once that's down in the whole way, you can go ahead and put your bolt in and tighten it down. Alright, all the rails are installed, the forks are in place. Here it is in, this is actually, it would be in third gear right now. I'm just turning the input shaft with my hand. It feels real good, not tight, not loose. Overall, I'm excited and ready to get this transmission bolted back up to the tractor. As you saw in the pictures, the transmission has been now reunited with the rest of the tractor, and the tractor is sitting on all four wheels. I know I said at the beginning of this series, or the part 2 of this series, that I was going to include the steering box restoration. I'm going to make that as part 3 due to the length of this video. I know I always want to try to show as much as possible in these videos to give you an aid as what goes on fixing these Ford tractors. Unfortunately, I can't show everything because the video would just be entirely way too long. But I hope that I hit on the important things like adjusting the bearings. It's really important. Just remember, they can't be too tight. I know that I mentioned that I was actually below the specs for the Ford manual. But you have to remember that it was too tight. So basically you got to use good judgment and adjust accordingly. I don't know, maybe my torque wrench isn't quite as accurate as I think, or maybe it's because I had such a long extension on it. That might have an effect on the reading as well. But we're good to go now. Everything is in place, and see you in part 3 when we start the restoration of the steering gearbox. That will include some new bushings, new rope seals, and getting it timed properly so that your wheels will function properly out in the field.